Today we're talking about something that people talk about all the time. Money. People talk about it almost every day. People argue about it. People make plans around it. And so far in this series, we've talked about a new you spiritually. We've talked about a new you physically. We've talked about a new you emotionally. And if you missed any of those messages, I would encourage you to go online to hollychurch.org and watch the message there or download it. Of course, Sunday matters. I mean, your attendance here matters. It's important. But we record these messages. We post them online so you can always stay current with your church family. So today is all about the new year, new you financially. And so those ushers who are going to pick up the $500 debt giveaway forms, if you guys would come to the front right now, but do not start collecting them yet. Just come to the front and don't start collecting them yet. All right, everybody, eyes focused on me, ears focused on me. Up here. This is the only card that goes in. This is the only card they're collecting. Don't put your connection card in here. Don't put your offering envelope in here. You put the $500 debt-free giveaway card in here. What card goes in here? Yeah, that's it. All right, ushers, go ahead and collect those cards, if you would, please. Just pass the basket to the person next to you and on down the row there. While that is happening, I'm going to go ahead and set this down because all right, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the message here. When people are asked about what stresses them out, money is always one of the top stressors in people's lives. A lot of times, it ends up in the number one place in their life. What stresses them? For example, according to Lending Tree, this past December, 50% of people lost sleep over their holiday spending worries because they spent too much. And Live Science says 72% of Americans have stressed over money in the past month. And do you believe that's what Jesus wants for your life, you stressing over money?
No.
Yeah, I know. I can tell you this is not what Jesus intends for your life. And I can also confidently say, Jesus is probably not the one that got you into the financial mess that you're in.
No.
Jesus didn't come and get into your wallet or get into your purse and charge up your credit cards. He didn't get all those student loans. He didn't get that car payment or 2 car payments or the boat payment or the 5th wheel payment or the truck payment. He didn't do any of those things. But even though Jesus is not responsible for your financial stress, he does have a plan for a new you financially. And I do believe Jesus wants to bless your financial life. This does not mean that he wants to make you rich or that he's going to give you everything he wants. What it does mean when you honor God with your money is that he will bless you tangibly by making sure you have everything you need. And he will bless you intangibly with things like spiritual blessings, strengthened relationships, greater significance. And he will replace your financial stress with financial peace. But you have to do something. You have to position yourself to be in a place where God can open up those blessings into your life. Now, just as our Creator has put natural laws into place like gravity, he has also put into place spiritual laws, moral laws that cannot be broken. And there's an overriding spiritual law when it comes to your money, and I'm going to share that with you today. Now, if you want to know more about money, then you should sign up and be a part of Jennifer, my wife, and I. We're going to be teaching a class, one of the small groups this time. It's going to be Financial Peace University right here at the church. And you can sign up for that on your connection card or online at hollychurch.org. Now, there's a cost for Financial Peace University. It's set by the Dave Ramsey organization. And since there is a cost, we are going to provide childcare for this. And we'll go far more in depth in this area of finances because we are for you. If you're ready to make changes, we're for you. And with that being said, this area I'm covering today, this spiritual law concerning money, is essential for you to live a new you financially. I've read a lot about money. The Bible, Ron Blue, David Bach, Randy Alcorn, Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, J. Cliff Christopher, Art Rayner, Steve Stroop, Nelson Searcy, and a host of others. And most importantly, the Bible. And they all agree, no matter who I'm reading when it comes to money, they all agree on this spiritual law, which is good because it's what the Bible teaches. They all agree on this spiritual law that I'm sharing with you today. Message notes are inside your program if you want to follow along and fill in the blanks here. The essential key for Jesus to bless you in the area of money is for you to be living a generous life. So generosity. Our God is a generous God. Generosity is the key to a new you financially. It is a spiritual law of God that cannot be broken. It's as sure as this. It's as sure as gravity that it cannot be broken. The Apostle Paul, he's writing to Christians in the city of Corinth, Greece. He's writing to the church there. And he's writing to them about their giving financially. And he says this to them, 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 8. He says, remember that the person who plants few seeds. Now this is an agricultural society, so he's making a connection to their culture. The person who's stingy, he's saying, with their giving. So the person who plants few seeds will have a small crop. The one who plants many seeds will have a large crop. You should each give then as you have decided, not with regret or out of a sense of duty. For God loves the one who gives gladly, and God is able to give you more than you need, so that you will always have all you need for yourselves and more than enough for every good cause. Now, I believe most people, and most of you in here, if not all of you, but at least most of you in here, every once in a while you run into somebody who's really a stingy person, but I believe most people want to be generous people. They just don't know if they can be generous, or nobody's ever taught them how to be generous, or they don't feel like, hey, I don't know where to begin with this. So I'm going to help you with that today, where you begin in this area of generosity. 2 Corinthians 8 verse 7 says, since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love for us. And let's read this last sentence out loud together. All right, go. I want you to excel also in this generous act of giving. Circle that sentence in your notes. I want you to excel also in this generous act of giving. Jesus wants you. He wants us to excel in our faith. He wants us to excel in our knowledge. He wants us to excel in our enthusiasm. That's why we clap after somebody and cheer after somebody gets baptized into Jesus. That's why we clap after the songs. And didn't Danny do a great job with worship today? Yeah. That's why we clap. That's why we clap and we cheer when we say, hey, we're going to worship God through our giving, because Jesus wants us to learn to excel in our enthusiasm and excel in our love, and he wants us to excel in our generosity. And today I'm going to teach you how to begin to cultivate that in your life and excel at being a generous person, which is the key, the spiritual law for you to be a new you financially. So new year, new you financially. First, here's some truths about money. 3 important truths about money. Truth number 1, money is personal. And that's, you so often define yourself by how much you make. And others define you by how much you appear to make by that. So money's personal in that way. Money is powerful. Money has the ability to modify people's behavior. It can corrupt good character. It can corrupt good morals. And money is potential. Truth number 3. Money itself is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. I have a $20 bill here, and if I set this $20 bill right here, it's not going to jump up and bite me or anything. Because money in itself is neutral. what determines whether money is good or bad, positive or negative, is what I do with it. How I spend it, how I invest it, how I give it. And maybe you've heard that the Bible teaches that money is the root of all evil. It's close, but that's not what the Bible actually teaches. Here's what the Bible actually teaches. 1 Timothy 6:10. For the love of money. Circle that in your notes. For the love of money. And a lot of people love money, so it does become a root of a lot of evil because people love money. He says, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, and the some people here that he's talking to are Christians. Because here's what it says. And some people craving money have wandered from the true what?
Faith.
Yeah. And pierced themselves with many sorrows. Because the love of money messes up our lives, it messes up our priorities. And when money gets a higher priority than Jesus gets in your life, then that's not right. And when we love money more than we love Jesus, then that leads to all kinds of evil. And you can see that in the world. When you get to the bottom of a lot of evil things, it's always somebody's making some money from it. But when you talk about you personally, if the love of money in your life becomes greater than the love of Jesus, then Paul says it leads you away from faith in Jesus, and it pierces your soul with many sorrows. And I do not want that for you. I'm for you. And so I brought a ladder in here today, and this ladder, I know it just looks like every ordinary day ladder except for this thing up here, but this ladder is the generosity ladder. So it's not just any old ladder, it's the generosity ladder. And I brought a friend with me too. I don't know if you can see him yet, but he's down here on the floor. His name's Max, and he's got this really cool shirt on. And it's got somebody's face on there that I think is very familiar on there. And he's got his do-rag on, and I'll explain more about that later. But how many of you were here for Hogs and Dogs last Father's Day? Yeah, that was fun, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we ought to do that again this year, maybe. So, all right, my friend Max, he's down here on the floor. He's not on the generosity ladder yet at all, but he's recently given his life to Jesus. He's become a follower of Jesus Christ. And so he's asked, he said, what do I need to do? What are some of the things I need to do? And one of the things that, I'm going to teach Max, and you guys you get to listen in to it. So, Max, one of the things you need to do is you need to worship Jesus through your giving. And so, 100-day New You Financial Challenge. And so I tell Max, I say, Max, you need to give Jesus a first-time financial gift. You need to give that to Jesus. And Max says, that sounds like a great idea. Jesus saved me from all my sins, and he's given me a home in eternity forever and ever. That sounds like no problem at all. He's ready. He wants to give Jesus for the first time. And then I explained to Max here that giving is an act of worship. It's an expression of worship when you give to your Lord. Whether you're giving in a service, whether you're giving online, whether you mail in your giving, whether you bring it by the office, whether you automated your giving, it's all an act of worship to Jesus when you give. You are worshiping Jesus when you give. And there's a subtle flaw that some people get in their minds. And I just ran into it this week. Now, I'm going to give this person a pass because they're not a Christian. They're not a believer in Jesus. But a lot of believers have this little subtle flaw in their thinking too. Here's how the thinking goes. It goes something like this. I'm giving to the church. No, you're not. You're giving to the Lord. Now, the church receives those tithes and offerings given to Jesus, and then our goal, our responsibility, is to use them as wisely as possible for Jesus' glory and for his purposes here on earth. But giving is an act of worship to your Lord. It's the heartfelt response of thankfulness. That's why Paul says, don't give out of regret. Don't give out of duty. It's a heartfelt response of thankfulness and gratitude that we offer to our God. And getting on this first rung of the ladder means you've given an identifiable gift to Jesus. You're giving online, or you gave using the offering envelope inside your program. So Max, you're making yourself accountable. And sometimes, Max, not that often, but sometimes believers in Jesus will just kind of stall out here because they don't really develop a plan for their giving. Their giving is just, sporadic. It's, if I'm in a worship service or the Spirit moves me, then I give. And we expect you to give here. We expect unless you make zero income, but if you have any income, we expect you to give here, because if you're not learning to excel in this area of generosity, you are stunting your own personal spiritual growth. And it's impossible for a person to be fully developing as a follower of Jesus if they're not giving. And you might be thinking, well, I don't think I can really give. I just don't think I can. Well, yes, you can. And it's important that you do, because giving shows that your heart is tied to Jesus' heart. Here's what Jesus says about that. Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. He says, For where your treasure is, your money, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And heart in the Bible represents your life, who you are, your entirety as a person. And Jesus wants what? He wants your life. He wants to be Lord of your life. You know who else wants to be Lord of your life? Money. They both want the same thing. And so when you give to Jesus, it indicates, hey, my heart is tied to Jesus' heart. So, bear friend, this is a good place to be, but you want to move up the ladder. You don't want to get stuck here. So, the next step of the ladder, I call it the growth level, is you return a regular gift to God. So, if you have a job, now, Max here, I don't know if you figured out his job yet. He fixes Harley-Davidson motorcycles for his bear friends. You've seen those bears, right? They ride the little motorcycles, right? Well, that's what he does for a job. So he says, hey, I want to give regularly to God. So I tell him, well, he goes, but where should I start? And then, I just give an amount. The amount, it could be more, it could be less, but I tell Max, I say, well, Max, $25 a week is a good place to start. Now, I certainly don't recommend you stay there at that place, and I encourage you just to automate it, just to make it automatic on the inside of your offering envelope there. And he asked me, he says, well, why $25 a week? Well, it's enough to show Jesus you're intentional with your giving. You're not just checking for, well, how much cash do I have in my pocket this week? You're intentional with your giving. Now, some givers get through these first two stages. Some believers in Jesus, they just really excel at generosity, and they go up to the next level we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But most find themselves here, right where Max is right now, where they're learning just about generosity and to excel in this area of generosity, this grace of giving. Now, this is the stage where you've thought about your giving, and you've determined this. It's not just, it's systematic, I call it. It doesn't matter if you're in church or not. You're going to give. You're going to give this amount weekly or monthly, whatever it is. And like I said, a lot of people will automate it just to make sure they're giving on a regular basis. And this down here, you don't want to get stuck there. It's not a bad place to be. It's a good thing. This is a good place. But you don't want to get stuck there because it's not the best place for you. And I do have to say, a lot of Christians get comfortable right here in this space right here. But being comfortable is not the best place for you when it comes to generosity. You want to learn to excel in this grace of giving. And so you want to move up the ladder to return to the obedience level, I call it, to return the full tithe to God. Now, he works perfect in practice. There he goes. And Max is ready to do that, so he goes right up there. Now, this is the obedience level, which this means these two steps are not bad. While they're not bad, They are partial disobedience to Jesus. And look, I am for you. I am for you becoming a new you financially. And I do not pronounce ultimate judgment on anybody. That is not my place. My place is to teach you and guide you into what Jesus teaches and to do all I can to lead you into obedience, whether we're talking about money or whether we're talking about anything the Bible teaches on. However, I love you, and I want the best for you. And I want the same thing the Apostle John wanted. This is what he says in 3 John, verse 2. He says, "Beloved, I pray that you are prospering in every" what?
Way.
Yeah, and that your health is good, just as your soul is prospering. I want the same thing. I am for you. I want you prospering spiritually. I want you prospering physically. I want you prospering emotionally. And I want you prospering financially. I've said it often. I've said, I want your wallet fat. I want God's best for you. And when you're not on the ladder at this obedience level, it does limit Jesus being able to pour blessings into your life of both a tangible and intangible nature, because he won't break his own moral law. And I don't know about you, but I want to be in obedience to Jesus in every area of my life. Now, sometimes I fail miserably, but I want to be obedient. And so in this area of honoring Jesus with our finances, obedience is returning the full tithe to God. Now, sometimes the word tithe is a little misunderstood. It's really simple. It means a tenth or 10%. So 950, what's 10% of that? Yeah, 95. Just move the decimal point over. $1,000. 100, yeah. 2,000. 200, yeah. So that is what 10% is. And I'm going to share a few key verses from the Bible about the tithe. This is not all the Bible has to say about it, but it's a good summary of what the Bible says. And it should clear up a lot of common misconceptions. So the first is from Malachi chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. Now, the prophet Malachi is recording the words of God himself. So, God's speaking here. He said, should a person rob God? But you are robbing me. You ask, how have we robbed you? You have robbed me in your offerings and tithes, so a curse is on you, because the whole nation has robbed me. Bring to the storehouse a full tithe of what you earn, so there will be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord of hosts. I will open the windows of heaven for you and pour out all the blessings you need. And I want you to understand the curse in this verse is not a proactive curse. That is, it's not God going, hey, you're robbing me, I'm going to come get you. That's not the heart of God. That's not who God is. Rather, this is a reactive curse. In other words, where God can't release all the blessings he wants to because he doesn't break his own spiritual laws. And his spiritual law says you receive the full blessings. Those are released when you return the full tithe to him. Now, God doesn't want to withhold his blessings from your finances, but he can't bless your finances fully unless you're returning to him the whole tithe. Wouldn't you like God to bless your finances?
Yes.
I want him to bless my finances, especially when you never know what the economy is going to do, and you never know what the politicians might come up with.
Amen.
I want God's blessing on my finances, and so we get out from under the curse, and we honor God by bringing him the tithe. And where does the tithe go? Well, it says it goes to the storehouse. Well, in the Old Testament, the storehouse was the temple of God where God was represented on earth. And in the New Testament, the storehouse is the church where God is represented on earth. And his purposes are to be lived out through us and accomplished in the world. Another important truth about the tithe, because some people have gotten some misinformation about this as well. They say, well, Moses, in the second book of the Bible, in the book of Exodus, Moses wrote down that the tithe. So that's where it started. Well, actually what Moses did was, if you want Moses' law, which I don't want to live under Moses' law. I want to live under grace, under Jesus' law. But under Moses' law, the tithe was actually 33 1/3%. not 10%. He increased it by 23 1/3% when he wrote down that law. But the 10%, or the first fruit tithes, was there from the very beginning of creation. We see this in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel were brothers. And Abel and Cain, they both brought offerings to the Lord. And the Lord was very pleased with what Abel brought, and he was displeased with what Cain brought. Well, why? Well, here's what it says, Genesis 4:3. It says, later Cain brought some food from the ground as a gift to God. Now, his brother Abel had brought a lamb to give to God, and some people have thought, well, Cain just brought the wrong thing. It's like God wanted cash, and you brought your debit card. That's not what I wanted. That's not the case at all. It wasn't what Cain brought. It was that Cain only brought, what did he bring? Some. It wasn't 10% that he brought. And this is made clearer when we look at the Septuagint version of the Old Testament. The Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. In Jesus' culture, everybody spoke Greek and read Greek. It was like English is today. Greek was the culture of trade, or the language of trade. So everybody spoke it. And the Septuagint Bible is the Bible Jesus taught from, read from, and quoted from, and so did his apostles. And here's what it says in Genesis 4:7. Speaking of Cain, God says, though you have offered right, he says, it's good to give to me. That's good. Yet you have not rightly divided. It wasn't 10%. My guess is, knowing Cain's nature, as he told God it was, hey, I'm bringing you the whole 10%. And it really wasn't that. And so he says, have you not sinned? So long before Moses wrote anything down, God's moral law, this law of generosity, this first fruits, or this tithe, has been a part of God's moral law from the very beginning. Proverbs 3:9-10 confirms this. It says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits, or the tithe, of all your income. Then you will have more grain and grapes than you will ever need. I always love receiving testimonies from people in our church family who they make this step. They go from 1 or 2 and they go up to this step. Here's one I received. It says, we really struggled moving up the ladder to the tithing level. But we made the decision to do so even in the middle of a very bad financial time for us. And it's really amazing to look back now and see how God began to bless us immediately. And then I received another one, a praise, the praises and prayer requests on the back of a connection card. This was just last Sunday I received this. They said, since we began the tithe challenge, we had a tithe challenge last year. It says, we have been blessed with our dream jobs, and they just thanking me. They said, thank you for sharing about God's plan for our finances. So, there's a next step today on the back of your connection card. They talked about a tithe challenge. I just put a next step on the back that says, yes, I'm committing to the 4-month tithe challenge. You say, I'm putting God to the test. So if you're down here or you're down here, you just make the move to the obedience level. As you're learning, this is all about learning to excel in this area of generosity. Now, there's one more challenge for a new you financially. That's right up here at top. And Max decided he's going to go move right up here as well. And that's become a generous giver. Peak level. This is where you're giving above a tithe, above 10%. You're giving an offering above that. Max set a giving goal. He said, I'm going to give 11%. And he said, Lord, help me do that. And so that's what he's asking Jesus to do for him. Now, this is where Jennifer, my wife, and I, this is where we live. We have for several years. And I never lead you, or I never ask you to do anything I don't already do. And we bring our full tithe to Jesus here, and we bring offerings above that. Now, the Bible has several striking examples of people who are generous givers, who are living at this peak level. One of the most dramatic examples is found in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44. It says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched. I find that interesting. Jesus watches our giving. He sat down and he watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts, and a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins, be equal to about $2 in our money. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything. Okay, $2. Now that's like nothing, right? To most of us, $2, you say, that's all she had. Think about that. If that's all you had was $2, and you gave it to Jesus. That's what she did. And he said, she has given everything she had to live on. That's generous giving. And I want you to notice, Jesus doesn't chase her down. Hey, lady, don't give that. Don't do that. He doesn't do that. Why? Because he doesn't want her to miss out on the blessings she was going to receive for being a generous giver. I'm for you, and I want you to be financially healthy. I want you to be in a place where Jesus can just fully release his blessings into your finances. So let's bow our heads and let's talk to him. Jesus, I care for each person here, and I am for them. And I realize that money is a huge stressor for many. And I know, so I pray for them, but I also know obedience to you can replace that stress in their lives with your peace. So I ask for your Spirit to be at work in their lives, giving them wisdom, giving them strength to develop good financial habits so they will be financially healthy, so they'll be financially well. Now, keeping our heads bowed and our eyes closed, I'm going to lead us in a prayer of surrender to Jesus. And if you'd like to just surrender to Jesus, just pray these words silently in your heart and mind right now. This is for all of us. Jesus, I want you to be Lord of my entire life, including Lord of my money. I surrender my life to your control, Jesus. It's in your name, and if you are praying that prayer, you can say out loud with me. Amen.